Filling your campaign setting with interesting locations, NPCs, monsters, adventures is a pretty daunting task for any game master. Especially if you want to hit that fine line between having a location that scares the living shit out of your players, but at the same time you want them to want to go there. And that is exactly where the Wastes of Chaos comes in. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Tarask and today I want to talk about the Wastes of Chaos. Now the Wastes of Chaos is actually a 2-book series, if I can so call it, because it also has a book called the Tales from the Wastes, which is essentially 15 new single session adventures set in the Wastes of Chaos. Now I'm not going to really talk about this now because I want to go deeper into this book, the Wastes of Chaos, although I recommend getting the adventure book if you are ever buying this book. So what I want to do in this video is two things. Like always, I want to give you a brief overview and kind of talk about what you get from this book in general, and then I want to take a more deeper look into the PDF and show you one or two things that I absolutely like about it. Now, full disclosure, I didn't really pay enough attention when this was a Kickstarter or when it was released and all of that stuff because I had other things to review and other things on my mind. But me being Mr. T, I get all content by Kobold Press sent to my mailbox. They keep sending me packages, they keep sending me books. So inevitably, I got my hands on the Wastes of Chaos. So I took the book out of the box and I was like, okay, so I knew this was a thing, didn't really look at it, but then I started looking at it and I started looking for where the Wastes of Chaos is in the Midgard campaign setting, only to discover that the Wastes of Chaos aren't necessarily a part of the Midgard campaign setting. Now, they can be a part of the Midgard campaign setting if you want them to be a part of the Midgard campaign setting, if you're playing in the Midgard campaign setting, but essentially, the Wastes of Chaos is one of those settings that you can drag and drop into any campaign setting. It is comparable to the Margrave Forest by Kobold Press, where you have the Margrave Forest, which is a magical forest with a mind of its own that you could just take, and although it essentially is a forest that is in the Midgard campaign setting, you can just lift it up and drag it into your own campaign and drop it right there, and you can play it the way you want to play it in your own campaign. Now that said, the Waste of Chaos is a bit more loosey-goosey in a way that it doesn't necessarily strictly say where everything is, and it gives a bunch of really cool locations, it gives a bunch of really cool monsters, it gives a bunch of really cool player options and all of that stuff, but it isn't a campaign setting in a sense that it has its strict where everything is, which is the nature of the Wastes of Chaos. So in essence, the idea behind the Wastes of Chaos is that somewhere in your world there is an area, a very large area that is filled with chaos. It has environmental effects that will instantly kill you. It has floods, it has lightning storms, it has creatures that you cannot even imagine even exist. It has old ruins that feel safe to hide in and then completely consume you the next day. It has stuff of nightmares that consume your brains and instantly make you go crazy. It has all of that crazy stuff going on, and it's created by something Kobold Press calls chaos magic. And it is, of course, a place that draws many daredevil adventurers in because it might have some secrets and some treasure that they really, really want. And one thing that surprised me about this book is, although it talks about the Wastes of Chaos themselves a lot, it also talks about the boundary between the Wastes of Chaos and, I'm gonna say, the common world. Like the people that literally live on the edges of the common world and the Wastes of Chaos. So these are kind of people who can deal with both sides. They really are really hard and sturdy and are really good at surviving on their own and all that stuff, but they can also be played as a playable character very well, because they can also go into society and take care of themselves there. So the borderlands are actually also a big part of this book, which I like a lot. So like always, well, ever since I started doing it a couple of videos ago, I will read from the back of this book really quickly and give you some general thoughts on it because I've read a good chunk of this book, like most of it, and I think I can probably give you my opinion on some of this stuff. So first of all, details on chaos magic, corrupted locals, fiendish cults, and ancient treasure. That is like the wastes of chaos. They fill the waste of chaos in with something like they call chaos magic, which is basically the stuff that creates all of the chaos. Corrupted locals, so they talk about like the locals, the people that actually dare to live in the waste of chaos. Fiendish cults, yes, they even have like groups of people that live in and around the waste of chaos, which might be against each other, might become your allies or your friends or your enemies or whatever. So they don't only talk about the locations and all of that stuff. They don't only talk about like here's a ruin and there's a creature and a monster. No, they also talk like about the people that actually dare live in and around the waste of chaos, and of course ancient treasure. Duh. Now, 4 playable races and sub-races, including automatons, which I don't really like. They don't give me a good vibe. Dust Goblins, which are awesome, and Wasteland Dragonborn. Now, they don't mention the Wasteland Orc in here, which is one that I might probably like the most. I will talk about that in the PDF a little bit later. 8 subclasses, such as the Doombringer Fighter, Way of the Chaos Monk, and Wasteland Ranger. One that they don't mention here, it might be the craziest subclass, probably due to its art and due to its ID. It is the Rogue Bandit Priest, if I'm not mistaken. It's called a Bandit Priest. It's basically a rogue, a healing priest subclass for the rogue. So it's essentially multi-classing into the cleric without multi-classing into the cleric. It's crazy, and the artwork is really ridiculous in a good way. I absolutely love it. 4 Wasteland factions, their followers, including the Cult of the Black Goat, and Chaos Reavers. Over 40 new creatures. Yes, there's a shit ton of creatures, over 40 in here that you can pit against your players, all the way from these low creatures your players will probably just smash in one hit. They all the way up to like the Eldritch, including the Eldritch Horror and the Chaos Drake. I talked about the Chaos Drake earlier on my channel. And there's even some creatures in here that might as well just created the Wastes of Chaos themselves. That's how powerful they are. And full color maps, spells, magic items, and more. So that is what to expect from the Wastes of Chaos. So here it is, everybody, the PDF of the Wastes of Chaos. And as you can see from the table of contents, it has a lot going on for it. First of all, they talk about the dangerous lands, which are the different types of lands you can put in and around your Wastes of Chaos, or whatever you want to call it for your campaign, but I'm calling it the Wastes of Chaos. Badlands, battlefields, deserts, haunted marshlands, all of that stuff. Then they go into the Heroes of the Borderlands, which has 4 new races and a few subclasses for different classes in the player's handbook. Then they talk about people, tribes, and cults. Now, for me, in my head, it would have made more sense if they take this chapter, make that chapter 2, and slap that together with, like, talk about the Waste of Chaos first for a while, and then go into, like, the player options. Now it is more scattered around, which for me makes less sense, but anyway, they probably have a good reason for doing that. Then they go into let's see. So they have people, tribes, cults that you can use in your game that become your allies or your friends or your enemies or somewhere in between, or just contacts that help you out for a coin. You know what I mean. Places of Chaos is a bunch of interesting locations you can choose to put in your Waste of Chaos or around your Waste of Chaos for your players to go, all with like adventure hooks and all of that stuff. And then they have a bunch of monsters of the wastes, which is more than 40, if I'm not mistaken, monsters of the wastes. A few in here are really scary and really weird, but really cool. They talk about 3 new types of magic: ancient magic, chaos magic, and doom magic, which is really interesting. And then, of course, there's always, like always, gear, ancient treasure, all of that stuff. And they have an appendix on Midgard lore, basically talking a little bit like how this book, The Waste of Chaos, how that can fit into your Midgard campaign, which is a part that I really like, but I'm not really going to talk about, because for me, this is a book more for people who play any campaign setting. Essentially, not everybody on my channel plays in the Midgard campaign setting, right? So anyway, there's a few things I want to talk about here. The video cannot take half an hour of your time, so I will do this like pretty quickly. So there's first of all the races, which is really interesting because there are a bunch of new races. Now there is this one, the automaton, which is something humanoid-ish. It is of flesh, it is humanoid, it is not a construct, but it is created in a jar. It grew up in a freaking jar or something like that. And although it has everything a humanoid has, a heart, lungs, all of that stuff, the blood that flows in their veins is of an artificial kind. So this is really not my thing. I'm not interested in this in the slightest, but there's probably a lot of people that really like this. It's like somewhat Gearforged and somewhat humanoid, somewhere in between. Meh. But then there's dust goblins, which are really cool. Dust goblins, of all the humanoid races that live in the blighted lands of the world, perhaps the most successful are the dust goblins. Their ability to survive in almost any environment and the prolific rate at which they breed enables them to face nearly any challenge that comes their way. So yeah, those are the dust goblins. They have some really cool stuff. First of all, they have chaotic mindset. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, which is always very cool to have. Sneaky and willy. You have proficiency in the dexterity, stealth, and wisdom survival skills. When you attack a creature that is unaware of your presence, so if you're a rogue, for example, and you're hiding, the target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failure, the target is frightened of you until the end of your next turn. I really, really like that, especially if you combine this with a certain subclass in the book, which is really cool. So yeah, there's the Wasteland Dragonborn as well, which is also really cool. And then there is the Wasteland Orc, which I love a lot. Now, a little disclaimer, most of these creatures, especially the orc, has a few things, like, for example, bonus action to move up to your speed, or this goes descriptor against. There's something, they are resistant to some kind of new type of damage, force damage, if I'm not mistaken, which is not new, but it doesn't necessarily happen a lot. So, playing this race only really makes sense when you are playing a Wastes of Chaos campaign, or at least your game master is taking a lot of the Wastes of Chaos from the book as a toolbox and is doing a lot of that. Then it makes sense to play this. They have proficiency in a survival skill. You can double your proficiency if to locate fresh drinking water or dangerous hazards and creatures. You can survive for extended periods without sustenance, so you don't have to eat as much. In addition, the heavy folds of your skin around your eyelids grant you advantage on saving throws against the effects of airborne dust particles and similar substances that could cause blindness or otherwise impair your vision. So this all makes sense if you're playing a Wasteland campaign where there's a lot of sandstorms and a lot of that magic that blows up dust in your eyes and stuff like that. That's where this race really makes sense. But also for me, thematically, it's just a really cool race. It's a more skinnier, sleek type of orc, which I really, really like. They literally say that, so it's not only the artwork that's sleek and stuff. Then there's a bunch of subclasses. Barbarian Path of the Demon. There is the Druid Circle of Dust, but the weirdest one, there's also this one, the Doombringer. And the reason I think the Doombringer is really cool together with the Dust Goblin, which might not make sense. I like it. Could be really funny to be like a Dust Goblin Doombringer, right? But the Doombringer is basically a fighter who has a helm. And as long as you wear that helm, it grants you extra powers. The helm in itself isn't really a magic item, so somebody else wearing it doesn't give them those powers. It's you wearing that helm that gets that power, right? So they have an ability here, right here, where they have Terrifying Visage. The target's made so you can settle your gaze on a target within 30 feet of you as an action. The target must then make a wisdom saving throw or become frightened for you up to 1 minute. So now, if you take this with the Dust Goblin, you have two different ways of making an enemy frightened. First of all, by attacking them when they do not know you're there. If that fails, you use an action to gaze at them to terrify them. So you actually have two abilities to terrify your enemy. Also, when you have this subclass and an enemy is terrified, you deal extra damage, because it says right here, when you strike a creature suffering from the frightened condition, you deal an extra 1d6 damage to the target, which is cool. So that combination is really cool, because you want to frighten as many enemies as you can. So making a Task Goblin Doombringer could be a really cool metagaming thingy for you to create. Even if you're not playing Wastelands campaign, it's really, really cool. But I have to say, this one, I look at this, just look at this artwork. This is just, yeah, this is pretty insane. This is a rogue bandit priest. Sometimes even bandits need divine aid to fall back on to heal their injuries or tend to their spiritual needs. In lieu of having a cleric or druid perform the function, one of the bandits might take it upon themselves to fulfill the role. Bandit priests are rogues who have a connection with a particular deity. So basically, at 3rd level, you gain the ability to cast Blast and Healing Word for your chosen deity. You can cast it each spell once per long rest. Wisdom is your spellcasting ability. They also have, whenever you or an ally within 10 feet of you fails a charisma, dexterity, or a deception, sleight of hand, or stealth check, you can utter a minor blessing as a reaction to allow the target to re-roll the result. The target must take the result as a new roll. You can use this ability number that equals to your dexterity modifier. So having a rogue with a high dexterity modifier is a good rogue, right? So they add this in, and you can have people re-roll their die, but it is a number of times equal to your dexterity modifier. So it really, really helps each other out right here. So it is this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and I really want to play this. I really want to play the character that you see here. I mean, this is awesome. This is just awesome stuff. Yeah, so those are the subclasses and the races. Then there are the Places of Chaos, which are a bunch of interesting places that you can take your players to if you so choose to use the lore of that places in your game. For example, let's just quickly click one just to see what you can expect from them. For example, Cathedral of the Black Goat. So the Black Goat is basically a society/cult thingy in the Waste of Chaos. For more information, you read up on that for yourself because there's just too much to talk about. Basically, they have a cathedral, and all of these places have their own lore, they have their own stuff going on, they have their own adventure hooks, they have their own, for example, a section on exploring the cathedral, and most importantly, for a lot of people, it has a map. Every section of this book where it talks about an interesting place you can drag and drop into your campaign, it has a full map for you to use, print out, put on your table, on your virtual tabletop, whatever, with numbers everywhere for like what is what and what you can be found there. And of course there's like the creatures that are there and why they're there and all of that stuff. So basically all of these locations are like almost a one-shot or a short form adventure in themselves. And then outside of locations, lore, stories, tips and tricks on how to put stuff in your campaign, random rolling tables to put stuff in your campaign, and why and when and how and what, there's also, of course, monsters. And a bunch of these monsters are in the section of where the cults and all that jazz is. For example, again, the Black Goat cult is right here. There's like crazy abominations going on right here. And a lot of the stat logs that you need for that are in here. But the book also has a section on Monsters of the Wastes, which I will just quickly scroll through just to give you an idea. Like, there is low-level creatures, chance rated 1, swarm of anathema locusts. Wow, okay, so a swarm, there is bats in here, there's humanoids in here that just live in and around the Waste of Chaos, goblins, all of that stuff, really weird stuff. The Chaos Drake is in here, which I already covered on my channel a while back, because Kobold Press gave me like the opportunity to be the only one talking about it, which is great. The Chaos Drake, by the way, is a Drake that, depending on its color, it does another damage type and all that stuff. So it's basically like a mini dragon, which basically what a Drake is. A Dreadmouther? Holy shit, that's really creepy. I've been flipping through these monsters before, but you know how it is when you flip through bestiaries. There's always like you flip through it and then you flip through it again and then you see something that is just, you didn't see the first time you flipped through it. And that was basically this pile of goo with mounts coming out of it. Here is the first time I see it, and this is the first time I see the droid from the Phantom Menace right here. Then there's some alien-like creatures. Yeah, just look at this. It's just I don't know what this is. This is a flying fish with tentacles. It is what is it called? It is a satire. It's a slitherjack. Oh my god, there's so many crazy shit here. There's yeah. Just to give you a general idea of what kind of monsters you can expect from the Wastes of Chaos, there is some crazy stuff in here. As you can see, there's also like these creatures that get into your brain or your face or whatever and make you do all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's not only like beasts and animals, there's also tribes and humanoids that you can fight to have more of like a political war going on, or just a bunch of adventurers to get attacked by a random shadowy thing, or this really weird ogre. You know what I'm getting to. Really cool monsters for a really cool book. Look at this. This is really cool. It's crazy. Yeah. And that is it for the Waste of Chaos. Like always, there's a bunch that I didn't talk about in this book. If you have any questions, put it in the comments below. I'll try to answer it to the best of my abilities. But there's just too much content to talk about in one video. These videos are just to give you a general idea of what these books are. Also, if you're getting the Waste of Chaos and you want to have some great adventures in the Waste of Chaos, using some of the locations and some of the stuff from the Waste of Chaos, make sure to look at Tales of the Wastes, which is a bunch of 50 new single session adventures suitable for levels 1 to 20, playable separately or in a sequence, which I will be talking about later. And until next video, bye bye.